Earlier you mentioned that in the time that has passed, there is a greater collaboration between IOG and Singularity Net, and that is the AI domain specific language. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say there's a lot of collaborations between different groups within IOG and different groups within Singularity Net. So the AI DSL is one of them, and there's a bunch of other interesting stuff too, which we can talk about. So the notion of the AI DSL, which stands for AI domain specific language, is we want to have a fully fleshed out language for two AI agents running on Singularity Net platform to talk to each other and basically describe their needs and properties and capabilities to each other. So what this AI need to say, well, I can classify images or videos, I can deal with these file types. If you give me X amount of images or videos to classify, I can I can do it for this amount of money. I need this kind of compute resources to do my thing. I will take this long to solve the problem. My expected accuracy is this much if the lighting conditions are so and such, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how does an AI agent describe itself and what it can do to another AI agent? How does a data set describe itself? So I put my DNA data online. I need to say, well, this is, DNA data gathered on this platform, RNA data gathered on this platform under these conditions at this time, and so forth. Either for an AI algorithm or a data set, you need a formal way for them to describe themselves to each other. And without that, how can one AI invoke another AI to do a job for it? How can AIs decide to collaborate with each other? And without that, you need a human in the loop to decide which AI can do which job. And we don't want a human in the loop at that plumbing level of the system. So we've been working together between some of the functional programming boffins at IOG and our AI and functional programming guys in SingularityNet to design a specialized language for the AIs to communicate with each other, which is it's not Haskell, but so far we're implementing this in Idris, which is sort of the next step beyond Haskell. So Idris is a dependently typed functional language, which has a sort of more elaborated mathematical type system than Haskell with greater flexibility. So I look at Idris now is sort of where Haskell was in the late 1990s, I would say, in terms of it's just barely gotten efficient enough to actually use, but it still is mostly an academic user base. So we're experimenting with the AI DSL now. It's not yet integrated into the end user version of SingularityNet platform, but we're hoping to roll that in along with the full port of SingularityNet Marketplace and protocol to Cardano, which is should be sometime early next year. We don't have a date for it yet because there's dependencies on when various Plutus libraries are going to get rolled out.
Okay, so Idris is essentially the Haskell to Cardano's Plutus, as it is to your AI, domain specific language.
Yeah, we're using Idris now to experiment with the AI DSL. Really, it's the mathematical structures that are important. So
Really?
whether Idris is what's used for the final launch of the AI DSL is not obvious yet. That is it's the most natural candidate. That's what the current alpha version uses. I mean, we're also developing an even more out there programming language called Meta, METTA, and that's uh, even more abstract and cutting edge programming language that we're developing for the new version of our OpenCog AGI engine called Hyperon. So we're we're playing around with some AI DSL stuff in Meta and some in Idris. It's clear that you want to go beyond Haskell in terms of the expressiveness of the type system, but yet Haskell is much better at interfacing with this sort of more advanced language than Solidity would be, for example. I mean, if you want to interface funky AI or AGI languages like this with Solidity, you basically need to have Solidity like just communicating at a large remove from those languages. There's no easy way to make them interoperate. Whereas in Haskell, I mean, you can map Haskell types into Idris or meta types. You can set up sort of morphisms between the languages, so that there's more to go on there. And Hydra is going to be quite interesting in this regard also, and that's another thing beyond the AI DSL we've been looking at. Like, I mean, the Cardano in itself is going to be an amazing infrastructure for Singularity Net, which will increase scalability and reduce cost and let us better integrate things like homomorphic encryption and multi-party computing for scalable machine learning and machine reasoning. On the other hand, there's some things we want to do in Singularity Net that may need us to go beyond the way the current Cardano system manages consensus. And for that, we can do some specialized things on Singularity Net that then connect via Hydra with the main Cardano chain. And we've just been exploring that with some of the IOG team. Like, say you want to make a swarm AI where you have millions of AI agents that are creating and destroying new AIs many times each second, right? So that has different requirements than a payment system or something.
Yeah.
But you can still do that using Plutus, which is like Plutus running on a Cardano side chain that interfaces with the main Cardano chain using Hydra. And Hydra is not quite ready for that yet, but we've been talking to the Hydra team and sort of syncing up with their roadmap. So we've got a lot of things ahead, right? So I mean, obviously now that Plutus is out there, everything becomes possible, which is amazing. This is like a watershed moment in the development of blockchain and really of IT technology overall. To have, like, this is the first ever smart contract language that works at large scale and low cost and doesn't totally suck, right? So I mean that's because Solidity is pioneering, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing that it was out there, and using WebAssembly as some platforms do is not a terrible idea either. But like in the end, nobody really wants to program the world's banking system or the thinking machine to obsolete humanity in Solidity or WebAssembly, right? I mean, and any more than my first programming language was Basic, and Basic was cool. I learned a lot from Basic, but in the end, I didn't want to implement scalable AI algorithms in Basic, right? So
Yeah.
I think Plutus gives you the starting point, but then we have a whole bunch of steps we need to undertake, right? So I mean, the first thing, which is coming up this fall, is AGIX token just moved onto Cardano, which requires some Plutus contracts for converting back and forth between the AGIX on Cardano and the AGIX on Ethereum. I mean,
So how does that work? Do you essentially just burn the tokens on Ethereum before they come here? How does that process work at the protocol level?
It's just burning and minting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean but so that's why we did the hard fork, because you couldn't burn and mint the original AGI token on Ethereum. The smart contract didn't allow it. So now in the move from AGI to AGIX, I mean, the X is for cross chain, right? So then we can burn and mint the tokens and keep track of everything in a secure way that guarantees you're not allowing the token supply to inflate beyond what it's supposed to, and you can go back and forth. And I mean, we're starting with Cardano and Ethereum, and I anticipate before too long the vast bulk of AGI tokens will be on Cardano. But on the other hand, it is a full-featured cross-chain platform, right? So I mean, we've done a little work with the NEM blockchain before. We could put AGI on a bunch of different chains if we wanted to. And as Charles Hoskinson has said, the future probably doesn't have one blockchain to rule them all, although certainly there will be some that are much bigger than others. You're probably going to see a collection of different blockchains that are specialized for different purposes and of different communities, and you're going to have interoperability among them. I mean, At the moment, I'm pretty bullish on Cardano as having potential to be sort of the 800-pound gorilla among all of those. But I think it's very wise that Charles isn't trying to push Cardano as the only blockchain because I
Yeah.
mean, again, the internet and TCP/IP protocol becomes a good guide. Like Linux is great. I love Linux, and Linux runs the majority of the internet. I don't think it's important that Linux runs 100% of the internet, right? I would love to see more innovation in the operating system space and see people come up with other out there operating systems, maybe to run embedded devices or tablets or whatever they do. Some of those ideas will filter into Linux. Sometimes it's just a separate thing, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
maybe Cardano becomes to the blockchain ecosystem what Linux is to the internet. Like it runs more than the other things do, but I mean it's an open system, and you want different networks to be able to interoperate with each other freely. So have anyway in terms of the roadmap, having AGIX on Cardano is a start. Then once we have that, we can do staking and other sort of tokenomic things on Cardano. But then the larger step, which is likely to be early next year sometime. I mean, the larger step is moving the whole Singularity Net marketplace from Ethereum onto Cardano, and we can have both Ethereum and Cardano versions. But basically, the bulk of our effort is going to then go into the Cardano version. That requires us to put like the multi-party escrow contract and some fairly subtle things inside Singularity Net platform into Cardano, and then we're now going back and forth with the Plutus team on the right way to do all that within the extended UTXO framework, which is not incredibly hard, but it is different than how you do things on Ethereum.